Hollinger International Inc. Background information. HHI is a Canadian global newspaper company which published newspapers all over the world, starting with USA, then to Great Britain, and so on to Israel. Its major assets were the Daily Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, the Spectator's magazines, and 100 other papers all over North America. Hollinger International Inc. is best known for its ownership of newspapers such as London's Daily Telegraph, the Chicago Sun-Times, and the English-language Journalism Post. This corporation was very large, ranking third in the world in the newspaper industry. The company took its name from Hollinger Gold Mines, which was started in 1909 and later had become Hollinger Mines, owner of one of the world's largest gold mines in Toronto, Ontario. It was developed by the Argus Corporation, which Conrad Black has taken over in 1978 and sold off its assets by 1985. The newspaper, which were non-Canadian, were sold off to Hollinger International in 1996 and its Canadian papers in 1997. Hollinger not only had become large, ranking third in the world, but it has also become holding company for stakes in various companies. Ravelston Corporation controlled Hollinger Inc., which was used a personal holding company for Conrad Black. Conrad Black, aka Lord Black. Not only was his family wealthy, but they were also very well known. Starting with his father, George Black. He was a Winnipeg businessman and a president of Canadian Brewers, also known as the father of the media tycoon, Conrad Black. Now, when his father died, he left him and his brother 22.4% of Ravelston Corporation, which owned 61% of votes in Argus Corporation. And then in 1978, Black paid $30 million to take control of Ravelston and thus control of the Toronto-based Argus. After that, Conrad had the whole control of the Hollinger Corporation. Now, by looking at these pictures, you might get an idea that Conrad loved living huge. These are some of the examples of some of his houses that he owns. The top right is the one in Toronto, and the bottom right is the one he owns in Miami. He loved living rich, but the problem was that he was living rich illegally. Now remember that Hollinger was not just one big company, it was built up out of 5 different corporations. Ravelston Corporation Limited is a private holding company owned by Black and Radler, and it holds directly 78% of Hollinger Inc. Argus Corporation, also known as Argus, was a public company controlled by RCL. Argus is a holding company whose major assets is a 62% interest in Hollinger Inc. Ravelston Management Inc. is a private management service company who is owned by RCL. RMI's income is entirely earned by management services agreement with HII, and RMI financially supports Hollinger Inc. Hollinger Inc. is economically dependent on RMI. Hollinger Inc. holds 72.7% of voting shares of HII and 30.3% of the equity. Hollinger International Inc. holds an interest in approximately 55 corporations. Some quick history. 1985, Conrad Black takes over 14% holding in the Daily Telegraph. 1992, Hollinger develops a 21.5% stake in Southam Inc. 1994, American Publishing Co. develops the Chicago Sun-Times, renamed to Hollinger International. 1996, Hollinger takes a large interest in holding Southam Inc., which then develops the rest of the Daily Telegraph, goes public. 1998, 40% interest is sold. 2003, Black is forced to resign as Hollinger International CEO. 2004, Hollinger begins auctioning off its asset after being bankrupt, venturing into Australian publishing in the early 1990s. Now, since Black wanted his newspaper business worldwide, he decided to start off by purchasing 25% interest of John Fairfax Holdings. Now, that was not enough for Conrad. Therefore, he wanted to purchase 50% in order to have more power as well as more votes. But unfortunately, he was not successful at getting it because they would not allow him to. Therefore, he had sold his shares to New Zealand investment firm at the end of 1996 for $515 million, even though while owning that part of the share, he had invested over $300 million. Now, another case was Southam Inc. In 1992, Hollinger purchased 21.5% share of Southam Inc., which was a large newspaper corporation. Then thought to buy 41% out of the controlling minority interest for $294 million. During 1996, Hollinger International Inc. increased its interest in Southam to 50.7%. As Canada's largest newspaper publisher of daily newspapers, Southam had then published 32 daily newspapers and 58 non-daily. Therefore, Hollinger had finally purchased Southam completely. What was the scandal all about? Well, the two partners, Conrad Black and David Radler, engaged in theft in about 95% of the entire net income of Hollinger International Inc. Behind a constant stream of different kinds of methods, Black and Radler lined their pockets almost every single day in almost every kinds of ways. Created their scheme through series of related transactions involving, among other things, claimed as non-competitional payments, also known as unauthorized. Black and Radler also had made sales of Hollinger International newspapers to other companies while making profit privately without bookkeeping everything they were doing. Hollinger International personnel falsified corporation books and records of all the transactions which were being made by Black and Radler. International of diverting money that should have gone to the company and its shareholders have gone to Conrad and Radler. Black and his partner had paid money to earn some. Now, how did this happen and when did it all start? Well, the SEC complaint was on January 16th, 2004. After the next 2 days, it went completely public. A series of unauthorized payments to executives Black and Radler. Now, unauthorized payments meant putting money in your pocket and transferring into your pocket without even telling anybody. From at least 1999 to 2001, HII had failed to disclose the specific information with SEC regarding the transactions of corporate assets. In order to cost some of the transaction that Lord Black and his partner had made on those corporate transfers, HII personnel falsified corporate books and records. Hollinger International Inc. failed to keep their books, records, and accounts filled and organized, which accurately reflect every single transaction and profit made. These $32 million was transferred to the benefit of the insiders and related entities to the detriment of the shareholders. Therefore, shareholders had lost a lot of money when they should have got a lot of profit out of the business, and most of the money had gone to Radler and his fellow. Hollinger International Inc. failed to devise and maintain a system of internal accounting controls sufficient to provide reasonable assurance that transactions were recorded in such a way to permit preparation of financial statements. So when SEC had came in and asked them for financial statements showing every single transaction ever made, HII was not prepared to do that because they were falsifying every single transactions they were making. Another GAAP was a US GAAP, principle of prudence. This principle aims at showing the reality as is. One should not try to make things look prettier than they are. Typically, revenue should be recorded only when certain, and provision should be entered for expense which is probable. Well, Hollinger International made their recordings fake and very untrue because they made their transaction financial statements look like they were normal and look like everything was fine, but honestly the money that they have taken away should have been in the transactions, and unfortunately it wasn't, and their statements were a lot lower and the net income was a lot lower than it should have been. Effects after the scandal. Consequences. The company Hollinger International Inc. suffered significant losses in 2001 and 2002. Hollinger International Inc. cut its quarterly dividend from 11 cents to 5 cents on the market. Huge debt loans, selling off assets because they were in such debt they were basically bankrupt. All assets are being sold off. Hollinger International debts are amounted to more than $200 million. Lord's holding company Ravelston Corporation was also charged, and Hollinger International was wrapped up the $1.33 billion sale of Telegraph Group to Britain Sparkley Brothers. Okay, so the company overall was completely separated off to different people and it was all auctioned off. Even though Black was charged for the money him and his partner had stolen, he still said that he was still going to be controlling the sharehold in Hollinger with 30% stake, and he remained in a powerful position as non-executive chairman of the company. Even though he stole money and he was a thief, he was still making money of the 30%, which was not fair. But the revelation cost him his job as a chief executive of Hollinger, so he was kicked off of his CEO spot. He and other executives agreed to repay some of the unauthorized payments, though the board was still suing them for $200 million. 5 years of jail, as well as $2,500,000 US fine. The authorities wanted more than 8.5 million US, as well as all of his houses were being sold off because he just needed all the money he could get to pay off the money he stole from the company. As Black stated, shareholders are left to dry off. All the money which they should have earned now needs to be investigated and after some time given the amount owed to the shareholders. In this case, the code time is money had played a huge role. They needed to find out how much money the business had earned from the start and how much money the shareholders are owed at this point. From the scandal, after Hollinger's scandal, the SEC had focused a lot more on the transactions of larger companies, making sure that everything was done correctly and truthfully. SEC had investigated furthermore into the case, as well as the company's personnel who have been filling out all these financial statements incorrectly. After that, SEC had then charged most of these people for more than $1.5 million, as well as 3+ years in jail for corruption and theft. Current status of Hollinger. On April 17, 2006, Stanley Beck was named chairman of Hollinger. Hollinger is now completely filled with security checks every few months by the SEC executives who comes in every other month to check every single transaction made from this business. Hollinger owned directly or indirectly 7,800,000 shares of Class A common stocks and 14 million plus shares of Class B common stocks of Hollinger International. Hollinger International on the New York Stock Exchange was worth $8.17, a lot more than it was when it was a bankruptcy, obviously, and market value of Hollinger's direct and indirect holdings in Hollinger International was $128.9 million. Not a lot more than it was before, but it's still raising its price day by day.